Everybody, Russell Gray, co-host of the Real Estate Guys radio show, and we're doing a special edition here, a discussion about opportunities in today's oil market. Right now, I think it's no secret gas prices are through the roof. Oil is up over $100 a barrel as we sit here recording at the end of May 2022. And the question for people who see that kind of price action is, shoot, where are the opportunities in this? Yes, you can go buy stocks in oil companies and you pay tremendous multiples on that, and you're very distant from the production and the profit, and you might get a ride up on the stock market, but you know the stock market has been very volatile right now. But there are ways to play in the oil business that are not really related to purchasing stock in companies, or at least big publicly traded companies, but you can get involved really more at the Main Street level. So to help us understand all that, we've got a oil man who's been in the business 40 some almost 50 years now, Bob Burr from Panther Exploration. Bob, welcome.
Hi, how you doing, buddy?
Good. I'm excited to talk with you. You know, we had that way back when oil was in a glut. We had, under the Trump administration, we had oil pumping like crazy. It got to oil independence. Oil prices came down because of good supply demand ratio. And then all of a sudden we had COVID-19 and the demand went down. We still had a lot of supply, and the speculators ended up getting stuck having to take delivery on, all this oil, and they had to pay for storage. It was like trading at minus $40 a barrel. And at that point in time, there was a lot of blood in the streets, if you will, in the oil business. Small producers just couldn't sell their product and get paid any money. And you stepped in and purchased a lot of that production. Pennies on the dollar, probably micro pennies on the dollar, and turned that into an interesting offering. Now we're on the opposite end of the spectrum. Now we see oil up at $100, $110 a barrel. And that creates some opportunities also. When oil, I think the obvious opportunity is to buy production when nobody else wants it, when it's cheap. And you did that, and that panned out really well. And you did that through a debt offering. In this case now, the opportunity is a little bit different. Tell us where the opportunities are in oil when oil is so high relative to its historical price.
The basic factors involved in us getting into the salt domes where we are now, and I'll explain that in a second, was the pandemic and the negative price of oil. You had a lot of guys my age, younger than me, been fighting the business for 30 years, 40 years, had made money or sitting on money, don't have to work anymore. And when they see this hit, they say, the hell with it, I'm worn out. If I can get pennies on the dollar, that's better, and give somebody else the deal. Let's go. Now, when you've been around as long as me, you drilled some great wells, you drilled some dogs, you've done all the stuff that you can do in the business. That's why I stay here so long. My CPA, Danny Looney, for 35 years in Dallas, actually gets mad at me for what I do for our partnerships. And that's the truth. It's not over till I say it's over. One of these days it won't be over until the boys say it's over. And what I mean by that is I have all types of leverage where I sit to help make a deal, a dog deal, into a decent deal. If I'm willing to put my money on the table, which I do, believe me, I do it, and I do it. Although you don't have to do it all the time, but you do it when you feel like, that old saying, the secrets to life is just do the right damn thing. And then you can forget the rest of this stuff. And I sleep good at night. I have no problem.
Well, let's come back, Bob, let's come back to this. I mean, we've got oil, 110 something dollars a barrel. And, I as a lot of people who follow me might know, I like precious metals. And obviously when precious metals prices are way up, it makes it a lot more affordable for miners to go pull metal out of the ground that's harder to get to. Because stuff that they couldn't get when gold was $1,000 an ounce, when gold is $2,000 an ounce, it makes sense. Are there similar opportunities in oil? In other words, when oil is $50 a barrel, there's certain reserves you just can't get to because it doesn't make sense. And all of a sudden at 110, it does make sense. Is there any of that going on right now?
You have a lot of that going on. But what we were different in the sense of the pandemic opened the door for us. Okay, we went and bought 2 beautiful properties, the Choctaw. Now, what's that? What is a property to us? What does that mean to us as a company and our partners? We got to know the reserves are there. It's got to be a proven area. We got to know it's undeveloped. Okay. And we got to know the price is right. Okay. All of these happen. Bam, 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 bam. We buy the acreage. We spend a year running title checks on the properties, making sure it's clean legally. We run a year building roads, infrastructure on how we can get back in to our areas. We run a year on developing relationships. Justin, my son, was down talking to the Department of Natural Resources, making sure we could get permits. Everybody said it was a problem getting permits in Louisiana. Hell, we got 15 permits today because we went the extra mile. The biggest deal, Russ, is we spent a great deal of time building our team that will do the work every day. The guys that's going to run the drilling, the guys overseeing the drilling, on and on and on and on and on. You've got to take a team. If I would go into Louisiana without a team, and I'd hire just a regular guy off the street that's a driller, they would break me in 2 minutes. It doesn't work like that. You better carry your own folks in there. Guys that's been through the fire with you, guys that know you pay your bills, guys that respect you as a businessman because you respect them as the oil guy. And we've got the greatest team in the world. We get over there, then Brad is a freak of nature when it comes to accumulating data. I mean, God, he's cost us $150,000 accumulating data going back to 1929. We know what every well in that field, when it was drilled, how much it produced, on it, what zones, on. Then you find the top geologists in the country, or as good as you can find. We have Bruce Bollinger. Bruce is a big boy. He's developed millions of barrels of oil. And what's fun for Bruce is he's what I call an office geologist. Exxon, one of the major companies, had a little office in New Orleans. He works all day on his maps and this. At 5 o'clock, he goes home. He finally finds, but he never gets to go out in the field and participate or enjoy the fruits of his labor. But God, he is out there on our first 2 wells for 4 days. These guys are awake 24 hours a day. I mean, my phone is sitting by my bed and it's clicking, texting all night long. Hit another zone. We did this, we did this, we did this. So that little team is just fantastic. They're the best. So all of a sudden they make us successful when 9 out of 10 guys would not have been successful with the same situation. They would have lost. We had to plug our first hole. We lost it. We understood the mud balance wasn't right. That's why we lost it. Went right back in, offset, drilled it, and took it down and hit this well. It's got 232 feet of pay sands that are loaded with oil and gas, primarily oil. Moved right over, did the offset. That well has 355 feet of sands loaded for bear. I mean, these wells are bigger than anything I ever dreamed of drilling. I'm talking about this is generation money. I won't see it, my sons won't see it, and maybe their sons won't see these wells being depleted to their last. So to answer your question, you go in and find a play that has big potential. If you want to kill an elephant, go to Africa. Lion, go to Africa. If you're blessed, and what is big potential? This is gigantic potential for us. But by the same token, you want it to have enough conservative stuff that your chances of drilling a dry well. Maybe the hardest thing is technically you'll lose more wells. Okay, then because you will get them plugged and you do have so many sands. But we got a structure together. Our drilling superintendent has been on this rig. He got on it when he was 23 years old and he's 65 now. He's taking my son and educating him. Everybody loves Bo. He's one of those guys that just, he'll get up there with the mud and the grade and whatever. People, they really go to it.
Well, so Bob, let me unpack this a little bit because, we have people, obviously we're the real estate guys and people are like, oh, real estate guys in oil, but, real estate is really the foundation of a real asset investing portfolio. And when you look at inflation, when you look at money being printed willy-nilly, when you look at the volatility in the paper asset markets, whether it's bonds now with interest rates rising, or the what happens in the stock market as people become very unsure of whether the Fed is going to be hawkish or not. And of course, nobody understands what's happening really in the economy because we're still suffering some of the distortions that were created in COVID. You alluded to some of those in your industry, but that's everywhere. We experienced it in the resort property business, in our resort property development. And so there's a lot of flux. And of course, the good news is when you have perspective, when you've been around for a while, when you can see the big picture and play the long game, and you have the right people. That's what I heard you talking about teams. You can recognize when there's an opportunity to step in and take advantage of maybe an anomaly or something going on in the market. So, but because there's a lot of similarities between real estate investing and oil and gas investing, and I've had to learn it, as you know, over the years with you. I've had to like unpack all your stories and listen to the thing you're saying, say what's really happening. So if I were to restate it, I would say, okay, so we've got a situation now where the oil industry went through big gyrations, and you've got the big companies that come in and they're managing quarter to quarter. They're trying to appease Wall Street. They've got to find big investments to make, really big investments. And so they come through, and maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, they go through these fields and they draw all of what they can get based on the technology that existed at that time. And then they move on. And these fields sit there, and they're proven fields. You know that there's oil in the ground, but 30 years ago, it maybe wasn't worth pulling out. And so there's these little operators that are in there pulling the oil out, and then oil drops. And they're like, okay, it's not worth doing anymore. I'm a small operator. I can't go to the stock market and raise a bunch of money. Can't go to the debt market and raise a bunch of money. I'm just a private person. And a guy like you sees that and comes in and says, hey, you know what? We'll take you out. We'll buy you out. And now you end up owning these prime properties that have proven reserves. You know there's oil in the ground. With today's technology, you can get it. It's not big enough for the big guys to go after. And it's just a little sweet spot where guys like you can play. And then you are able to take those opportunities then to pull that oil out that you bought for much less than today's price and sell it at today's price. And then you create an offering where investors can come in and buy into that through a private placement, which is not a publicly traded stock. So it's not trading at these huge multiples of earnings. It's more reasonable, and the return goes directly to the investors as opposed to being trickled through these, the way the stock market values it. Is that kind of the situation? You got these two properties you mentioned, and one of them I know the Choctaw is the one you've been really very excited about. We'll talk a little bit about that more in detail, but just to kind of get the overall picture, is that what we're talking about?
Oh, that's exactly what we're talking about. That's exactly what we're doing. That's what we've done. We were very fortunate. And again, since I've been here 47 years, okay, the guy asked me for a reference. I give him my phone number. I had it 35 years. I mean, we're real. We make it happen. The bad, the good, the joys, whatever. I'm beyond all that bullshit. We do good business. So now we got to get in the plan, and my plan is I have two sons in the business with me. What can I do? How can I guide this ship through all the canals and get it out to the main ocean where these guys can have a good ride? On top of that, taking care of the partners. They're the dearest souls in the world to me. Everybody, no one just gets money. They work their butts off for it, and I respect that, especially at my age. I know the hard times and all that, going through the real estate deal when you guys, a few years ago, when it went to hell in the handbasket. And no one can appreciate that more than me. No one can appreciate your life and the way you live your life and the economic life and all the pressures we face. So I have a good base in that.
Well, let's talk a little bit. You're building a family business. You got your sons coming up underneath you, and that's fantastic. I mean, when you're investing in small businesses, it's important to know. I mean, I think most of us would prefer to deal with the owners when you're dealing with the business as opposed to some employee. Or, that's one of my criticisms of Wall Street. You're dealing with uh, financial advisors who are really just quoting whatever the financial analysts are way above them are preaching. And then you're dealing with business managers and you're investing in these executives don't know who you are. And they're really serving Wall Street. And so it's a little bit different here. You're a family business. You're setting your family up. Long-term reputation matters. Been in the business a long time. I think all that's important. You talked about the importance of building a team. I think that's true in any business, right? You're going to go rehab apartment buildings. You better have a great team. One investor with a bad team can go in there and take a deal and totally ruin it. Another guy with a great team, same deal, can make the deal work. And so teams matter. And of course, how do you build those teams? You're in the business for a long time. You know what to look for. You build reputations. People like to work with you. But with all that said, we know that this is a business that's full of risk. One of the things in the tax code is that when you go to drill, and just, I'm going to take a step back for everybody. There is raw exploration where you're just out there looking, hoping that oil is there. So you do the geological studies and you say, okay, we think oil's there. And you go to drill and you hit that dreaded dry hole. And that means, okay, we thought oil was there. We missed it. We might've been off by a foot. We might've been off by a mile. We don't know, but we didn't hit. And so all the expense to drill yields nothing. High risk. And so what's great is that for investors who invest in that type of exploration drilling, when you hit, you make a ton of money. And the government, in order to incentivize that risk taking, gives you gigantic tax breaks. So we all know that exists. So the horror stories people hear in oil are often these people hitting dry holes, chasing unproven reserves, but the tax break mitigates a lot of that risk. Still risky and you don't make a return, but at least the tax helps. Then on the other side, you can way on the opposite side, you can go in and you can buy proven production that's existing. It's like buying a property that's already built, already rented, already performing well. Of course, because the risk is much lower, you get a much lower return. And what I'm hearing with you is there's this in between where we can go into a field that isn't yet producing, but it used to produce. So we know the oil is there. And so the profit margin is higher than going and buying the proven production, but the risk is as much as going in and trying to find unproven reserves. But the thing is the tax breaks to go develop this or redevelop what I would call redevelop this prior producing field. Are those tax breaks the same as raw exploration? Are they different? I mean,
exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly. To me, that's what I thought.
Break. Yes, sure. Now, you're on the right track in this field at Bayou Choctaw. We offset in our first 3-well program, 2 wells. We finished both. We were offsetting a well that had produced 1 million barrels of oil, and they left all this acreage undeveloped right by this well. Every well we'll drill in this field will be a developmental type drill, meaning we'll be offsetting good, solid reserves that have been recovered. We'll get up higher on the structure, the virgin stuff. I mean, these 2 wells are all virgin zones because we're up structure. They were lower, we got up higher, and we're in business. And we have room to drill 200 wells in the Choctaw. That's our plan over the next 5 years. And we'll have 2. We got 1 rig right now. We plan on bringing another one out after the first of the year, but over. And we're looking to have 3 rigs running.
So an investor, excuse me, an investor comes in and they're able to buy in and have an opportunity to participate in drilling these holes. They get the big tax break. Okay. Now, let's just talk about a little bit of the risk, because even though these reserves are proven, if you will, there's always the chance that you drill a singular well out of these 200 and that one doesn't hit. When
all three can be dry.
Yeah, exactly. So when an investor buys in, are they buying in a group or like 200? Are they buying in groups of 10? Or
we do them 3 wells at a time.
So you create an offering that represents 3 wells and someone could invest in that.
That's
so, right. And if someone were to invest, would it be possible for them to invest in a group of 3, another group of 3, and another group of 3? That way they diversify their risk even within your deal?
Well, sure. Okay. They'll have first rights of refusal as we develop their property.
Okay.
They become an investor, and we hit, let's say the next program we do, we hit 3 wells, we're going to offset drill to it. we have to let them participate before anyone else can get in.
Okay, so to a degree, you're diversifying the risk with respect to not just investing in a singular well, but instead of having, it's one well, 100% success, 100% failure. It's three wells, which could be 100% failure, could be 2/3, could be 1/3. We don't know. Or all three could hit. We don't know. So that's the risk. Are there any other risks when someone takes a look at this type of investing? You get the big tax break, you run the risk of running a dry hole, you mitigate some of that by using proven reserves or drilling a proven field and breaking it up, each investment into three wells. Any other risks that people should be aware of?
There is mechanical risk. As you drill down, you're going through tremendous sand bodies. And you're going to make sure that your mud is properly weighted. If you get into some zones, turns it to jail, the mud. So you got to know what you're doing there. The pressures, it's very tedious. That's why I'm saying our drilling folks, these guys have been doing this type of drilling for 35 years, and they know the deal. The first well, we were getting our pencil sharp, getting our tools sharp, and we lost it. We didn't lose the next well. We have a small rig. It's a single derrick rig. Everybody over there in Louisiana thought we was crazy. They used to bring in these huge rigs. We brought in this little baby. It's designed to drill what we drill. It spins faster, all kinds of advantages over. It's a smaller footprint, so we can get into close areas that the big rig can't get into. We can cherry pick some of these offsets to some of these big wells that nobody else can even drill because the damn rig's too big. And we get the rig in there and we can do all that. But the gamble or the real risk to me, even more than a dry hole, I don't expect to make many dry holes. We have too many sands. I mean, we have. You see that?
Yeah. Okay. Of course, that's all Greek to me. It looks like an electrocardiogram.
All these deals are oil and gas all the way down. The total pay on this was 355 feet of sands that will start at the bottom and will come up, and you and I'll be pushing daisies up when we get to the top of it.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to do, Bob, is help people who really don't quite understand, so if I'm underwriting this thing, the first thing I have to decide is, how do I feel about oil, right? Do I think we're going to go green and there's not going to be any oil need in the next 2 to 3, 5 years? This is a 5-year plan. So that's the first thing I got to think about. How do I feel about oil and where it's at in the cycle? And of course, from a dollar perspective, how oil is going to stand up relative to the dollar, right? If inflation, meaning the dollar loses value, if that's going to be a long-term trend, then anything real, including real estate, including oil, including precious metals, probably is going to work well. Obviously, energy, and oil is the heart of energy, drives economic activity. If we think there's going to be strong economic activity and growth, then there's going to be demand for oil. And that's worldwide. It doesn't just have to be the United States. As long as there's an economy somewhere that is active in producing, oil is going to be consumed. We know China is a huge importer of oil. Europe is a big importer of oil. So there's always a market for oil if there's a robust economy somewhere. So I have to ask myself, of course, if we have a worldwide shutdown like COVID, we could have a temporary shutdown of economic activity. That's always a risk. And nobody would have thought that was a risk, 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And now we all know that that's a risk. But, is the world going to shut down again? I can't say. You have to make that determination, but that's a consideration. Obviously, when you are looking at a specific field, this is where you rely upon the geological reports. And I presume that that's part of your offering documents. You're going to show somebody, hey, this is why we believe there's oil there. And so this is where it starts to get into a little bit of, am I qualified to underwrite this? Do I even know? But you do have to understand the reason management, meaning Panther Exploration, believes that there's oil there. And I think if I'm underwriting this deal as an investor, I need to understand that. So now I look at that. Then the next thing I'm doing is I got to underwrite the team. Is this team capable of executing on the plan? What is the plan? And can they execute on it? And then to understand that, I mean, it's the same thing like Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett goes out there and, he doesn't run any of the companies he invests in. What he does is he looks at the industry they're in and the prospects for that industry. He looks at their positioning compared to competitors. He looks at the management team and whether they can execute. And if he likes all those things, he makes an investment. And I think that any individual investor needs to approach these types of investments the same way. Obviously, I could kind of reel you in because you love to talk and brag about your team, which is great, right? You're proud of them. You spent a lifetime building these relationships. And, I think it says a lot when you've been with the same people for decades. It's not like you're turning over. Oh, we got a new team this year. Well, what happened to the old team? Well, I mean, you've been with these people for decades and obviously building a family business. The reasons we like you is because, when we look at all these boxes, they all kind of check. Obviously, I'm not an oil man. I've learned a lot, as you can tell, right? I'm starting to understand the business quite a bit more. But I do think it's a space investors should give serious consideration to. And I know you guys are willing to spend as much time as necessary to help investors understand it. You've mentioned this Bayou Choctaw field in Louisiana a couple of times, to the extent that you're permitted. And, we're not soliciting or offering anything right now, but tell us a little bit about that deal. I mean, what does that look like from an investor perspective? Somebody comes in and brings X amount of capital, and everything goes according to script. What does that look like in terms of return, in terms of how long they're in the deal, how long they've got to be committed, stuff like that?
When they become a partner in one of our programs, they own a working interest in the program, 1%, 0.5%, 2%, and so forth. We do all the work. If a well comes in doing 100 barrels a day, they double their money in the first year. These wells we just hit, these guys, and we have some big partners on it. We have several that invested a lot of money. They just made 30 to 40 times their damn money. And that's a fact. That's not BS. I'm not hyping it. I'm tickled to death. That is the exception. That is not the rule. God shined on us. He gave us a lot of cookies, a lot of sugar. Thank you, Lord. But that is, and we'll get some more of these type wells in there. I mean, they're there. What they got to understand is, to me, the real gamble here is every now and again we're gonna lose a well mechanically. We're going to twist off. We're going to do, because it's hard drilling. You're right in the bayous. You're in the wetlands. You got to deal with the bureaucrats. I just upped my insurance, doubled it today in cost, because I got everything covered. I called our insurance guy and I said, buddy, if I wake up here in a year and you say, oh, I wish we'd have done that, I may come and choke you. I don't like unforced errors. I don't have time for it. So you play in that position, you better be the best. Yes, sir. And we got it. I got Bo with him and they got it all worked out. The premium double, but now I can sleep at night. I don't have to do this. By the grace of the good Lord and him helping me do things, I'm okay financially if I don't hit a lick. I'm doing it primarily for my boys and the generations, and that's what drives me. And it drives me harder now than when I was 25 years old, because I got all 20 grandchildren and 8 great grandchildren and all this good stuff, and it's beauty there. So I'm out like a lot of partners. I'm at that age. Our earning years may not be like they were before. We got to be careful. But I can honestly tell you, Russ, that I cannot take an investor or a partner's money and put it in to a deal, oil and gas in my business, exclude real estate. I don't know anything about it, even though I'm doing 2 big subdivisions right now. And I just got a check for $250,000 yesterday. But anyway, that's another story. But I will take, and we have the greatest opportunity that this old man has ever seen for partners. And God, I've got guys that's been with me for, Paul Broyhill, who just passed away at 98. He was with me for 40, 30 years, met him in New Orleans, on and on and on. And it just tickles me. But we're in a proven area. If they're interested, then what we have to do is educate them. That's the first. I don't want anybody coming in here unless. And all we do is we send out our maps, our subsurface geology, get all the pedigrees on the guys that are doing all of this. And we take our time. Any question not asked, please don't offend me. Ask it, because you can never offend Bob Burr or the folks with me. We're asking you for your money, and we're not willing to work our butts off to take care of you. Or if you have any ill feeling, keep it. It won't work anyway. That's how all this works.
Sure.
And but I can't present a better, every time they look at a prospect, they're going to see well, 100,000 barrels reserves recovered, 500,000 barrels, 35 mechanical failure, 1 million right around us. That's where we are. And we're digging out those little locations because it was a developed back with the big boys back when it took them 2 months to drill a well down there, old cable to all that stuff. And they left all this just beautiful drilling, about 20% developed. And they're saying we have 80 million barrels, 100, I mean, numbers, crazy numbers.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the thing that I've learned to understand. Back in the old days, back in biblical times, you'd have the farmers or the landowners, and they would have the grape fields, and they'd harvest them, but they wouldn't completely pick them dry, and then the gleaners would come through behind and pick what was left behind, and it was good produce. It was great, but it wasn't worth the time of the original landowner to go after. So I'm looking at the oil industry and watching that, and as I seen the price go up, it just made sense to me that you'd start to see these reserves that had been abandoned would become available and become enticing, and there'd be good ROI there for people who knew how to locate them and develop them. And obviously that's what Panther Explanation does. We're not here to suggest anybody should do anything or invest. We just want people to begin to understand that these types of opportunities are out there. You can participate in what's happening without having to go through Wall Street. My mission in life is Main Street, investing in Main Street. There's risks on both sides, but I'd rather do business with a human being. I'd rather be able to look at a deal I understand. I like my privacy. Private placements are very different than public. You don't have the same volatility. These types of deals aren't being traded around in the casinos of Wall Street. You put your money in and you're in for a while. You might be in for 3 to 5 years, and you get some return, but it's not like oh, I can sell this and go chase the next shiny object. So it does take a more sophisticated investor, somebody who's a little bit more committed to the space and to the team, and who understands what they're doing. But to your point, I've always known you to be willing to answer any questions. Sometimes you have to learn how to speak Bob. Which I've had to learn to do over the years. That's why I like to do these videos, because I kind of interpret for our audience. But I think oil is a great place to play right now, and I think that the what you guys are doing makes sense to me. At the surface, obviously, you have to dig down and do your own due diligence, and accredited investors only. This is a Reg C offering, so if you're non-accredited, you can't play. Sorry, but if you're accredited and you're interested in learning more, you can get more information. Just send an email to Choctaw, CHOCTAW, Choctaw at realestateguysradio.com. And then we'll connect you with Bob and his team. And you guys, if you're interested, you can, request the offering documents, go through whatever education they have, check with your CPA, see if you're eligible for the tax breaks, and you can do the math. But I would encourage anybody, whether it's with Panther or anybody else, to take a look at what's going on in oil right now, because we're at a point where oil is very high, and yet you have to argue that the economy isn't booming the way it could be if we end up having a recovery. And so if economic activity increases, demand for oil will go up. Most of what we're seeing in oil, in my estimation, is just my opinion, I'm not giving anybody advice, probably driven by inflation. And so you look at that, and of course, we did have some production come offline. First thing the current administration did was shut down some production and add some bureaucracy, some administrative costs to development. But for people who know how to play that game, and it's been up and down, right? That's always, yeah. Administrations come in, they're for oil, they're against oil, they're for oil, they're against oil. I mean, we don't know. But right now, nobody has a viable alternative. So the world needs oil. The world consumes oil. I think there's a big opportunity. So if you're interested in talking to Bob and his team, just send an email to Choctaw, CHOCTAW, Choctaw at realestateguysradio.com. Bob, anything else that people need to know before we wrap this thing up?
Not really. I've enjoyed visiting with you. Tell the folks out in your land that we will be very, very happy. We'll take our time. We will answer their questions properly. And if they see that there's a potential need, but we'll do whatever they need us to do to get them in line with us, or us in line with them, and go from there.
It's a lot of fun. And
I
Bob,
love
I
the
always,
real estate guys, and I appreciate you guys very, very much.
well,
You're
I
good
always
people.
enjoy talking with you and love hearing your stories. We'll probably be doing some of that this year on the Investor Summit. So we're going to look forward to hanging out with you and your team there too.
Okay, buddy. You
All right, take
care.
care, Bob. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.